You keep chasing success like it's some complex formula, some secret code only the elite understand. That's your first mistake. Success isn't complicated. You're addicted to novelty, to shortcuts, to feeling like you're doing something advanced. Meanwhile, the guy who's beating you is doing the same basic things every single day with ruthless precision. You're not losing because you don't know enough. You're losing because you refuse to repeat what works. Let me break something uncomfortable for you. Greatness is built on boredom, not excitement, not inspiration. Boredom. The basics are simple, and that's exactly why weak men avoid them. Wake up on time, train hard, execute your work, control your impulses, repeat. You think that's beneath you? That mindset is exactly why you're stuck. You want complexity so you can justify inconsistency. You want new strategies so you can avoid discipline. Now understand this: what you call speaking in tongues isn't some mystical nonsense. It's the language of the elite, and you don't even hear it. It's the silent communication between men who operate on discipline. It's the unspoken code of repetition, control, and execution. When a man walks into a room and dominates without saying a word, that's him speaking in tongues. His habits are his language. His consistency is his voice. His results are his message. You're out here talking too much, thinking too much, planning too much. Meanwhile, the man who wins is executing. Over and over again, same moves, same habits, same focus. He doesn't need motivation because he's built an identity that doesn't negotiate with weakness. You negotiate every day. I'll start tomorrow. I'm tired. I need a break. That's your language, and it's the language of losers. Repetition isn't just action. It's identity programming. Every time you repeat the basics, you're telling your brain, this is who I am, not who you want to be, who you are. And once that identity locks in, everything changes. Discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes default. You don't wake up and decide to be strong. You wake up strong because you've repeated strength so many times, it's embedded in your system. You want dominance? Then stop chasing advanced tactics and master the fundamentals like your life depends on it. Because it does. The strongest men on the planet aren't doing anything magical. They're just doing the basics better, harder, and longer than you're willing to. They've eliminated excuses. They've eliminated emotional weakness. They've eliminated the need for constant stimulation. You keep telling yourself you need more knowledge, more clarity, more preparation before you can finally start winning. That's the lie you've been feeding yourself to stay comfortable. The reality is far less flattering. You already know enough. You just don't execute enough. And deep down, you're aware of it, which is exactly why you keep distracting yourself with learning instead of doing. It feels productive, but it's just a polished form of avoidance. Look at your behavior, not your intentions. You've consumed information, watched videos, read advice, maybe even taken courses, yet your results haven't moved. That's not a knowledge problem. That's a repetition problem. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't filled with more ideas. It's filled with the same actions performed relentlessly, without negotiation, without emotional interference. There's a harsh truth most people refuse to accept. Execution is uncomfortable, repetitive, and often boring. It doesn't give you instant gratification. It doesn't make you feel smart or ahead of others. It makes you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again while seeing slow, incremental progress. And because of that, most people abandon it. They go back to learning because it feels easier, cleaner, and more exciting. But excitement doesn't build results, repetition does. You don't rise to the level of what you know. You fall to the level of what you repeat. That's the rule. You can understand every strategy, every concept, every shortcut, but if you don't execute consistently, it's worthless. Knowledge without repetition is just unused potential. And unused potential has zero value in the real world. The man who wins isn't the one who knows the most. It's the one who shows up and performs the basics every single day, regardless of mood, regardless of circumstances. He doesn't ask himself if he feels like it. He doesn't negotiate with his emotions. He has removed the decision-making process entirely. He executes because that's what he does. That's his standard. Right now, you're treating action like a choice. That's your weakness. When something is a choice, you can avoid it. When it becomes a standard, there's no escape. You don't debate brushing your teeth. You don't argue with yourself about whether to eat. Those are non-negotiables. The same level of certainty needs to apply to your work, your discipline, your execution. Every time you delay action in favor of more knowledge, you're reinforcing a dangerous pattern. You're training your mind to associate progress with thinking instead of doing. And over time, that becomes your identity. You become the person who plans, analyzes, and prepares, but never delivers. That identity is silent, but it's destructive. It keeps you stuck while giving you the illusion of movement. Repetition, on the other hand, rewires everything. The first few times it feels forced, then it feels difficult, then it becomes familiar, and eventually it becomes automatic. That's when real power begins, when execution no longer depends on motivation or discipline, but runs on autopilot because you've repeated it enough times to make it part of who you are. You don't need another strategy. You don't need another plan. You need to take what you already know and apply it with brutal consistency. The same actions, the same standards, the same level of intensity every single day. That's where the separation happens. Not in what you learn, but in what you repeat when nobody is watching. You say the basics are boring, as if that's a flaw in the system. It's not. It's a flaw in you. The fundamentals are simple by design, and that simplicity exposes your inability to stay consistent without stimulation. You've trained your mind to chase excitement, novelty, and constant variation. So when you're faced with repetition, you interpret it as a problem instead of what it really is, the path to mastery. Look closely at what you avoid. It's not complexity. It's consistency. You don't struggle because things are too hard. You struggle because they're too simple to hide behind excuses. When the task is straightforward, there's nowhere to run, no advanced theory to blame, no confusion to justify delay. It becomes painfully clear whether you have the discipline to execute or not. The strongest individuals don't need constant change to stay engaged. They understand that repetition is where control is built. They don't wake up looking for something new to feel motivated. They wake up prepared to do the same essential actions with precision. That's what separates them. Not intelligence, not access, not luck. Their ability to tolerate, even embrace, the monotony that weak men reject. You've been conditioned to believe that progress should feel exciting. That's a dangerous assumption. Real progress often feels repetitive, uneventful, and at times mentally draining. It doesn't give you immediate rewards. It demands patience, focus, and a level of internal control that most people never develop. So when you feel bored, you interpret it as a signal to stop or switch strategies. In reality, it's a signal that you're exactly where you need to be. Boredom is not the enemy. It's a test. It strips away external stimulation and forces you to rely on discipline alone. When there's nothing exciting about the task, the only thing keeping you moving forward is your standard. And if that standard is weak, you'll quit. You'll look for something more interesting, more engaging, more comfortable. And in doing so, you reset your progress back to zero. The man who thrives in repetition has a different mindset. He doesn't ask whether something is exciting. He asks whether it works. If it works, he commits to it fully, regardless of how it feels in the moment. His focus is on outcomes, not entertainment. He understands that mastery is not built through variation, but through refinement, doing the same thing repeatedly until it becomes precise, efficient, and automatic. You, on the other hand, keep changing direction. One day you're disciplined, the next day you're distracted. One week you're consistent, the next week you're searching for something new. That instability is the reason you're stuck. Not because you lack ability, but because you lack endurance in the fundamentals. Every time you abandon the basics because they feel boring, you reinforce weakness. You're telling yourself that you can only perform under ideal conditions. When you feel motivated, when things are interesting, when there's something new to chase, that's a fragile way to operate. It means your performance is controlled by your emotions instead of your standards. The reality is simple. If you can't handle doing the same essential task repeatedly, you're not built for high-level success. Because at the highest level, everything comes down to execution of fundamentals, under pressure, under fatigue, and without constant validation. There's nothing glamorous about it. It's quiet, controlled, and relentless. The difference is clear. Weak men need excitement to act. Strong men act regardless of how they feel. One is driven by emotion. The other is driven by discipline, and only one of them consistently wins. You keep treating discipline like a switch you can flip whenever life gets serious. That illusion is costing you more than you realize. Discipline is not an emergency tool you activate when things fall apart. It's a system built long before pressure shows up. And if you have it dulled to repetition, you don't have it no matter how strongly you believe you do. Watch how you operate under normal conditions. That's your truth. Not your intentions, not your plans, not your temporary bursts of motivation. Your daily behavior, when nothing dramatic is happening, reveals your real level of discipline. And if you're inconsistent, they're skipping tasks, delaying effort, negotiating with yourself. You're not disciplined. You're dependent on emotion. The uncomfortable reality is that discipline is earned through repetition of actions you don't feel like doing. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently enough that resistance loses its power. Every time you follow through despite discomfort, you're strengthening that system. Every time you give in, you weaken it. There is no neutral ground here. You're either building discipline or dismantling it. You want to believe you'll rise when it matters, that when the stakes are high, you'll suddenly become focused, driven, and unstoppable. That belief is naive. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of preparation. If your daily standard is weak, your performance under pressure will collapse. Not because you lack potential, but because you never trained yourself to operate without relying on feelings. Discipline starts as force. It feels unnatural, heavy, and uncomfortable. You have to push yourself, override your instincts, and act against your immediate desires. That's the phase most people quit in. They interpret the discomfort as a sign that something is wrong, when in reality, it's proof that the process is working. You're breaking old patterns and replacing them with stronger ones. Then something shifts. The same actions that once felt difficult begin to feel familiar. Not easy, but manageable. You no longer need long internal debates to get started. The resistance is still there, but it's quieter. You've repeated the behavior enough times that your mind begins to accept it as normal. And if you continue, if you don't stop when it becomes slightly easier, discipline evolves into something far more powerful: automatic behavior. At this stage, you're not forcing yourself anymore. You're executing without hesitation because it's embedded in your identity. The decision-making process disappears. You don't ask whether you should act, you act because that's who you are. This is where most people fail to reach, because they never stay consistent long enough. They experience the initial discomfort, maybe push through for a short period, and then fall back into old habits the moment motivation fades. They never allow repetition to complete its work. They keep restarting the process, which means they stay stuck in the hardest phase indefinitely. You need to understand that discipline is not about intensity, it's about consistency. Going all in for a few days and then collapsing does nothing for you. It doesn't build stability, it builds frustration. What matters is showing up repeatedly, even when your energy is low, even when your mood is off, even when you'd rather do anything else. Right now, your biggest mistake is relying on how you feel. You wait for the right mindset, the right moment, the right level of motivation. That approach guarantees inconsistency. Feelings are unstable. They change constantly. If your actions depend on them, your results will be just as unstable. Discipline removes that instability. It creates a fixed standard that you follow regardless of internal conditions. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't look for reasons to delay. You execute because that's the rule you've built through repetition. If you haven't reached that point yet, it's not because you can't. It's because you haven't repeated the right actions long enough to make them permanent. You think success is something you declare, something you talk into existence, something you convince others you have. That's where you've already lost. Nobody cares what you say. Your words carry no weight if your actions don't back them up. The truth is, brutal your habits are your real language, and right now, they're exposing everything you're trying to hide. Watch closely how people operate at a high level. They don't need to announce discipline, they demonstrate it. They don't explain their standards, they live them. There's no gap between what they claim and what they do. That alignment is what creates authority. Not confidence, not charisma, not talk execution. Consistent, controlled, repeated execution. You, on the other hand, are speaking two different languages. One with your mouth and one with your behavior. You say you want success, but your habits say you prefer comfort. You say you're focused, but your actions show distraction. You say you're disciplined, but your routine collapses the moment things get inconvenient. That contradiction destroys credibility, not just in the eyes of others, but in your own mind. Every time you fail to follow through, you send a message to yourself. I don't do what I say. That message compounds. It builds doubt, hesitation, and internal weakness. You start questioning your own ability, not because you lacked potential, but because your behavior has proven unreliable. You've trained yourself not to trust yourself. That's the real damage. It's not just the missed opportunities or delayed progress, it's the erosion of your identity. When your actions and words don't match, you lose internal authority. And without that, everything becomes harder. You hesitate more, you second guess more, you rely on external validation because your internal foundation is unstable. Now flip that. Imagine a version of you where every statement is backed by action, where when you decide something, it gets done. No excuses, no delays, no negotiation. That level of consistency builds a different kind of confidence. Not loud, not performative, but solid, quiet certainty. You don't need to prove anything to anyone because your results speak continuously. That's what it means to let your habits become your language. You're not trying to convince people, you're showing them. And more importantly, you're reinforcing it to yourself every single day. Each completed action strengthens your identity. Each act of discipline confirms who you are. Over time, that creates a feedback loop of control and confidence that most people never experience. Right now, your problem is that you overvalue intention and undervalue behavior. You think wanting something is enough. It's not. The world doesn't respond to what you intend to do. It responds to what you repeatedly execute. That's the only metric that matters. You also rely too much on talking, planning, explaining, justifying. It gives you a temporary sense of progress, but it produces nothing. Meanwhile, the man who says less and does more is building real momentum. He's stacking actions, reinforcing habits, and strengthening his position while you're still thinking about your next move. Your habits are visible whether you realize it or not. And how you spend your time, how you handle discomfort, how you respond to pressure. People don't need to ask who you are. They can see it. And if what they see is inconsistency, distraction, and lack of control, that becomes your reputation. You don't need to change your words. You need to change your behavior until your words become unnecessary. Because when your habits are aligned, when your actions are consistent, when your execution is sharp, your presence alone communicates everything. You keep reaching for complexity, as if it's a sign of intelligence, as if doing something advanced automatically puts you ahead. It doesn't. It exposes you. Because when you chase complexity without mastering the basics, you're not progressing, you're hiding. Hiding from the uncomfortable truth that you haven't built the foundation required to handle anything beyond the fundamentals. Look at how you approach your work. You want advanced strategies, optimized systems, shortcuts that promise faster results. But when it comes to the simple tasks, the ones that actually move the needle, you're inconsistent. You skip them, delay them, perform them half-heartedly, or abandon them entirely when they stop feeling interesting. That contradiction is exactly why you're stuck. The basics are not optional. They are the standard. Everything else is built on top of them. If that base is weak, no amount of advanced tactics will hold. It might look impressive for a short time, but under pressure, it collapses. And when it does, you're forced back to the fundamentals you should have mastered from the beginning. There's a reason the most successful individuals operate with ruthless simplicity. They'd stripped away everything unnecessary and focused on executing the core actions at a high level. Not occasionally, not when they feel like it, but consistently. They understand that excellence is not created by adding more, it's created by refining what already works. You, on the other hand, keep adding layers without strengthening the core. More plans, more ideas, more variation. It feels like progress, but it's not. It's noise. And that noise is distracting you from the one thing that actually matters: execution of the basics with precision and consistency. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If you can't dominate the simple tasks, you have no right to expect complex success. That's not harsh, it's logical. Complexity demands control, discipline, and stability. If those traits aren't present in your daily routine, they won't magically appear when the stakes are higher. Think about it. If you can't wake up on time consistently, how are you going to manage high-level responsibilities? If you can't focus on a task without distraction, how are you going to handle complex challenges? If you can't follow through on basic commitments, why would you expect yourself to succeed in environments that demand far more from you? The fundamentals are a filter. They separate those who are serious from those who are not, because mastering them requires patience, repetition, and a willingness to do what others consider too simple to focus on. Most people fail this test, not because they lack ability, but because they lack humility. They think they're above the basics, and that mindset guarantees failure. The irony is that true high performers never outgrow the fundamentals. They return to them constantly. They refine them, sharpen them, and execute them at a level that looks effortless from the outside but is built on relentless repetition. What you see as basic, they see as essential. Right now, you're trying to build on a weak structure. You're stacking complexity on top of inconsistency. That's why nothing holds. That's why your progress feels unstable. Because it is. And until you fix the foundation, it will stay that way. You don't need more complexity. You need more control over the simple things you're currently neglecting. The moment you start treating the basics as non-negotiable, everything changes. Your performance stabilizes. Your confidence becomes grounded. Your results begin to compound. But if you keep ignoring them, keep chasing advanced solutions without earning them, you'll stay exactly where you are, busy, distracted, and going nowhere. You keep acting like success is hidden behind some locked door reserved for people with special access, rare talent, or inside information. That belief protects your ego. But it's false. There is no hidden path. What you're calling missing opportunities is just you avoiding the obvious work in front of you. Success isn't out of reach, it's sitting inside the daily actions you keep refusing to commit to. Pay attention to your own pattern. You get motivated, you set goals, you make plans, and then you hesitate when it's time to execute. You delay, you overthink, you wait for the perfect moment, and when that moment never comes, you convince yourself that something external is holding you back. Lack of resources, lack of connections, lack of time. In reality, the only thing missing is consistent action. The uncomfortable truth is that you already know what needs to be done. It's not complicated, it's just demand. It requires showing up when you don't feel like it, repeating tasks when they feel monotonous, and staying focused when distractions are everywhere. That level of consistency isn't glamorous, which is exactly why most people avoid it. They'd rather search for something new than commit to what already works. You've built a habit of starting without finishing. You begin with intensity, then fade when the process becomes repetitive. That cycle keeps you trapped, not because you're incapable, but because you never stay long enough in one place to see results. You keep resetting your progress over and over again while telling yourself you're trying. Look at where you spend your energy. Thinking, planning, consuming information, comparing yourself to others. All of it feels productive, but none of it replaces execution. The man who wins is not the one who prepares the most. It's the one who does the work repeatedly, without interruption. He doesn't need constant validation. He doesn't need excitement. He just needs a standard, and he follows it relentlessly. Right now, your biggest weakness is avoidance disguised as preparation. You tell yourself you're getting ready, but you're really just delaying discomfort, because the moment you commit to daily execution, there's no hiding. Your performance becomes visible. Your discipline is tested. Your excuses stop working. And that's exactly why you resist it. The daily grind exposes you. It shows you where you're weak, where you lack control, where your focus breaks. And instead of confronting that, you look for something else, another idea, another strategy, another temporary boost of motivation. Anything that allows you to feel like you're moving forward without actually doing the hard work. But nothing changes until your actions change. Not your intentions, not your mindset, not your plans, your actions. Repeated daily without negotiation. That's where progress lives. Not in what you think about doing, but in what you consistently execute. You don't need better conditions. You don't need more time. You don't need perfect clarity. You need to take what's already in front of you and attack it with consistency. The same tasks, the same focus, the same level of discipline every single day. Because the truth is simple and brutal. The path isn't hidden. You're just refusing to walk it. Here's the truth you don't want to hear. You already know what to do. You're just not doing it enough. Not consistently. Not with intensity. Not with obsession. And until you fix that, nothing changes. No course, no mentor, no opportunity will save you from your own lack of discipline. So stop pretending success is hidden. It's not hidden. It's just buried under the repetition you refuse to commit to. Do the basics again and again and again until it becomes who you are. Or don't, and stay exactly where you are.